newly established democratic government. And now there's a new escalation of Taliban presence in Afghanistan and its ability to wage military operations against us and our NATO allies. And the situation in Afghanistan is now becoming more like Iraq, needing more troops and resources to fight the Taliban again. The critical question of why our country decided to wage war against Saddam Hussein is one that will be a matter of public debate for years to come. But suffice it to say, one, Saddam Hussein did not attack us on September 11, 2001. It was Osama bin Laden and his al-Qaeda organization that was based in Afghanistan and parts of Pakistan. Two, our president and his top officials had misled the American people and the Congress to state that Saddam Hussein possessed possessions of mass destruction, especially nuclear weapons. I honestly believe that this issue alone was the catalyst and what prompted Congress to give the president military authority to force Saddam Hussein to comply with UN resolutions and to also locate and destroy his alleged supply of nuclear weapons. Three, we may have won the war in Iraq by eventually capturing Saddam Hussein, but we have caused more tension and conflict among the rival factions between the Shiites, comprised of 60% of this country's population of 26 million, and the Sunnis, which make up some 20% of the population, and the remainder of the Kurds, which for the most part is not involved in this conflict at this point in time. I must include, Mr. Speaker, the name of former Army Chief of Staff General Eric Shinseki as part of the debate or discussion, if you will. General Shinseki, in my mind, was among the first of our military leaders who, for making an honest statement as a professional soldier concerning the situation in Iraq, was publicly criticized and humiliated by his civilian superiors within the Department of Defense. In response to questions by members of the Senate Armed Services Committee, General Shinseki was asked how many troops it would require to take control of Iraq. And his response was something in the order of several 100,000 soldiers. Here was a soldier who fought and was wounded while engaged in combat in Vietnam, a most respected officer who served with honor and distinction for some 35 years in defense of our nation. Needless to say, Mr. Speaker, I must say General Shinseki's professional assessment of the mismanagement, ill planning of this war in Iraq could not have been more accurate, given the sad state of affairs we find our country is in now when dealing with Iraq. Mr. Speaker, the resolution before us is plain and simple. It is clear. It is a clear statement to the American people and to the world that Congress absolutely supports the efforts of all the men and women who proudly serve the armed forces of the United States. And it also sends a very simple message to President Bush that his recent decision to send an additional number of 20,000 troops in the war effort in Iraq is not going to change the serious security problems and the civil war that is now in place between the Sunnis and the Shiite factions. Mr. Speaker, we have fulfilled our mission, our military mission, by capturing Saddam Hussein, who, of course, now recently was hung by the authorities of the new Iraqi government. It is up to the Iraqi people and their leaders now to determine for themselves a political solution to the rights and privileges of three major factions, the Sunnis, the Shiites, and the Kurds. It is a fact that 60% of the population in Iraq is Shiite. Prime Minister Maliki is a Shiite, and interestingly enough, the president is a Kurd. Now the question is how and in what way the Sunnis is going to be part of this newly established government. And there is no denial, Mr. Speaker, now that for the future and for the new government will be dominated by Shiites. An unintended consequence of our decision to wage war against Saddam Hussein, who was a member of the Sunni faction, which made up of only 20% of the population of Iraq, but that Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, Egypt, and the rest of the Muslim world is composed of 85% of the Muslim world is Sunni. We have to understand that. And Iran and the Shiite factions in Iraq to make up only 15%. I said earlier, Mr. Speaker, and I want to quote again my good friend's quotation from Daniel Webster, God grants liberty to those who love it, but I say they must also be willing to die for it. The civil war now taking place between the Sunnis and the Shiites is a war not for seeking liberty and freedom, but it is a religious war that has been going on for the past 1,400 years. There are never winners in religious wars, Mr. Speaker. And no force, not even the most powerful nation of this world, is going to change the hearts and minds of the Sunnis and the Shiites unless they themselves do so willingly and doing it in a political way. Mr. Speaker, I honestly believe that our troops now there and an additional number of 20,000 more soldiers that President Bush has ordered for deployment in Iraq are going to get caught in the crossfire in a civil war that is now going on between the Sunnis and the Shiites, a war that can only be resolved only among the Iraqi factions themselves and not with our military presence there. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution. And I yield back. I'm sorry. I ask unanimous consent, Mr. Speaker, to yield the balance of our time to the gentleman from New Jersey, my good friend, Chairman of our Subcommittee on Africa Global Health, Mr. Payne, so that he may be able to control the time on this side of the aisle.